Today we're going to do a quick lesson on using periods when you're writing in English. I found that oftentimes beginner students struggle to even know how to make a period with their pen mark, much less use them in a sentence. So we're just going to have a quick lesson on what a period is and where we use them in English and differentiate between a period and a comma. So I'm just going to jump in here and get started by sharing my screen. Using a period in English writing. What is a period? Well, simply put, a period is just that small dot that we put at the end of a sentence that makes a statement. We use periods at the end of a complete sentence. For example, right here on my slide, I have a period at the end of the first statement as an example of what a period is. Just a quick note, the period is always placed behind the last letter of the sentence. And also worthy of note is that that period goes right next to the last letter of the last word. And then there is a space after the period before starting the first letter of the first word of the next sentence. So make sure that you have the placement of that period correct. Also, a period is clearly a dot, a single on your piece of paper. It is different than a comma, and that a comma clearly has a tail. And if you are using your hand to write out English, it is very important that you make clear distinctions between periods and between commas. All right, next, when to use a period? Well, we use a period at the end of a complete sentence. In order for a sentence to be complete, it must have a subject, that is the doer of an action, as well as a verb, and that is the action itself. So in order for a sentence to be complete, it has to have both those components, both a subject and a verb. Now the thing is, in English, there's some variety there. We can have very short sentences. For instance, there's a sentence in the Bible, Jesus wept. It's only 2 words, but it has both the doer of the action, Jesus, as well as the action, which is wept. That is a complete sentence because it is a complete idea. Some sentences can be very long. For instance, here's another sentence. And when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside, and his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them by saying these things. It has all the necessary components. It has a subject, it has a verb, but it has a lot of other information in it as well. But it is one main complete thought. Here is an example of an incomplete sentence, how not to use a period. So God created them, fish for sea and birds for sky. And you can see in this example that, specifically speaking, in the second and third sentence, there is actually no action. So fish for sea, there's no action in that sentence, so it's an incomplete sentence. And the same with birds for sky. And actually, the first sentence, so God created them, is a complete sentence. It's just not a very good one because without the context of what's happening around it, it becomes very hard to distinguish what's going on there. So here we have an example of a short sentence. We have an example of a very long sentence. We also have an example of an incomplete sentence. So we use sentences at the end of, we use a period at the end of a sentence. We also use a period at the end of a sentence that makes a statement, and that's primarily what we use them for. They're different than question marks, they're different than exclamation points, which we'll cover in other lessons. But we use a period at the end of a sentence that makes a statement. And what is a statement? It's just simply an expression of a truth or a fact. For instance, how about this? Vegeta likes to learn English. Here we have a simple statement about this young woman and what she likes to do. She likes to learn English. Another example of a sentence that makes a statement is, Atul is a nice young man. There we have a very clear thought about Atul and that he is a nice young man. Or how about this? Varanasi is a crazy city full of mystery. Same thing, we just have a simple statement about the city of Varanasi. So we use periods in sentences that make statements. We also use periods at the end of sentences that give instructions or commands. So, a couple examples here. Wash your hands after you use the toilet. Very good advice clear command and instruction there. We use this period at the end of that sentence. How about number B there? Complete your application before you go to the office. So in that, we kind of have more of the instruction idea, but also a command or a recommendation in there. And number 3, open your phone, go to settings, turn on your Wi-Fi if you want to use our internet. There we have more of the instruction example, but we complete these kinds of sentences with a period. Another way that we use periods, which is a very complicated English structure, is in a sentence that has an indirect or implied question. So for example, we have here, I have a question for you. So that's an implication that a question needs to be asked, but it is not a question itself. So we don't use a question mark here, we use a period to indicate that the question is coming. There's actually a statement. How about this? Rebecca asked me why I wanted to live in Varanasi. So in this sentence, there is no actual question. There's just the implication of a question. Rebecca asked me why I wanted to live in Varanasi. We call this reported speech. We use periods in these types of sentences where an indirect question has been asked. And then last, Vijeta wondered why English is so hard to learn. So in a wondering or a pondering, there's no question actually being asked. This is just a statement about what Vijeta is doing. And so we use periods at the end of sentences that have indirect questions involved in them. And there you go. It's pretty simple. That is how we use periods in English, but it's an important part of learning to write well in English. And so learn these rules, learn these lessons, and we'll see you next time.